Hello everyone, welcome to the Lisa Burke Show. Lovely to be with you here in Luxembourg at RTL Studios. Fabulous to have my colleague Sasha Keogh next to me here. And today my guests are going to talk to us about politics, citizen politics, how to get involved at a local level and at a European level. Whatever age you are, I'm looking at the youth in the room. That will be Ivan Leal Martins, and I've also got Clara Moraru in the studio. So welcome to both of you.
Hello.
Thank you.
Great to have you here. We'll come to you, but as always, Sasha, we're going to start with a little reflection of the week's news. So we have to talk about the temperature.
Yep, we start with the weather. Oh, it's been hot in Luxembourg. I mean, we have spoken of little else this week, but then how hot we are and how hot everybody else is in Europe.
Yeah.
So yes, Wednesday was... I mean, I got into my car and it did say 42 degrees and I was like, oh, okay, that's proper heat. So I'm not just being a wimp.
No, you're not. No, you're not.
As a Portuguese, I can agree. No, you're not.
Yeah, so I was in London last week and then obviously I'm in Luxembourg this week, and it was hot in London as well. And the temperature, obviously, you can feel it differently. And I know that's been part of the conversation as well. I only bring that into the conversation because urban planning is so important in this. And even a lower temperature in London can feel extremely hot because of the buildings and depending on where you are, how much green space there is. And the tube, oh my Lord, not all of the tube lines have air conditioning.
Oh gosh. Yes, it's true actually. And this is what I think has been really interesting about this heat wave. I mean, obviously there are really awful things like wildfires in specifically in Greece and Turkey, and, you know, a few deaths as well. So, I mean, that apart being, you know, really sad. As you say, it's brought up this issue of town planning. And in Luxembourg, actually, they went around with a heat monitor to see the difference between the heat in the shade of a tree and out in Place Guillaume, so surrounded by buildings and concrete. And there the heat monitor said 42 degrees, and I think in the shade it was it dropped down to 30 degrees under the under the trees. So this is a massive difference. So I think for Luxembourg and for all cities, you know, it's the writings on the wall. We have to green our cities more. And I think Luxembourg is quite lucky. There are lots of parks and there are lots of trees wherever it is a priority. But for other cities, they
urban planning is extremely important. It's something that I've often thought about, particularly in Luxembourg, actually, when it comes to just the architecture. But in fact, I think it was just this morning I looked at a piece of news where somewhere they have found bricks that can have moss on the outside, and therefore bricks can be manufactured to be very green indeed. So the future is changing.
Yes, I mean, this is where the science should go. But what I think the other issue with this European heat wave is, of course, this was the week that the EU was putting out its climate targets for 2040. And so I think it feels very pertinent because in the last couple of years, frankly, the news has been overtaken so much, with day-to-day, all the terrible wars that are going on, that I think the Green Deal and the sort of the climate targets have taken a back seat. I mean, we saw it at the last climate conference that it just was not such a priority as it probably should be. And I read this quote sort of saying, wars dominate headlines, but the climate crisis fades into the background. Ignoring it will cost more lives than any current conflict. And I thought that is something that people maybe should remember.
And it will cause more wars. I mean, it's a longer conversation, but the changing water landscape in certain continents will increase migration. Migration is part of the conversation when it comes to certain war, conflict regions. We know that Europe will have more migrants because of climate change. This is absolutely a known fact, and various other reasons as well. So, in fact, the two are not dissociated.
Yes, absolutely. But meanwhile, I'm quite glad it's cooled down a little bit. Yeah. And it seems that I have an American friend for now will kind of relax a bit,
and he said to me, are our houses air conditioned? And I said, well, of course not. of course they're not air conditioned. Although perhaps some new apartments are. I'm not sure about that. I did read a few articles around the EU Green Deal as well for 2040. And even there are some get out clauses. There's the, certain percentages. You can have the carbon offsetting in other countries. So there's all sorts of games that are going to be played on that front as well.
Well, as we know, anything to do with the EU, obviously, they need to reach unanimous decisions. And that is the biggest issue, is that to get agreement is very, very difficult.
Why they ever thought that was going to work, I do not know how that ever came into being in the EU, actually, because even within one family unit,
you have to imagine also
consensus. It's not a word.
It's very hard, but you have to imagine like countries like Luxembourg or other small countries. They also want to have a say, and if you have this anonymous one, I'm with you. I think it's better to open it up, not just have being blocked all the time. But you have to imagine like these countries, they also want to have a say and want to feel like they matter, or else they will be overshadowed by big countries like Germany and France. So, and with the Green Deal and this side, people often forget the EU has different competencies. So there's like shared competency, mixed competency, and supportive. And climate is not an exclusive competency from the EU. So often, even if they want to do more, they have to listen to the member states.
Yeah. I think there's a difference there, though, because it's making sure Luxembourg is a tiny place, has a voice that is equal to a much larger country. But having everybody sign off, that is very, very difficult on anything.
Well, that's actually an issue that's quite pertinent to the other subject, which is, of course, sanctions against Israel, where, this week we had a petition in Luxembourg that was finally discussed in the parliament. It's been a year since the petition was passed. Here you have to now get 5,500 signatures for your petition to be debated in parliament. And the petition asked for Luxembourg to unilaterally impose sanctions against Israel. And Bettel, our foreign minister, responded saying, but that's not possible. We can't unilaterally apply sanctions, and it has to be as part of the EU, and the EU can't agree on sanctions against Israel. So it is, again, that's very complicated. And again, you sort of think, well, so the EU will never decide whether to sanction Israel or not, because there are always going to be one or two countries that I can immediately think of who are going to be against it.
Yeah, but at least the conversation can be made public, and at least it's being debated, and at least that's something, and it shows the view of a country internationally.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's always positive to have it open in debate and protests and all the rest of it. But I can see that from the petitioner's perspective, or from the protesters' perspective, they're there every week, you do feel a bit hopeless. So I was thinking this is quite interesting that we've got citizen politics in the studio, because, that was one where I was really struck by where the government can just say, yeah, we hear you, but it's out of our hands.
That is fascinating, because that's the problem. For good and bad, within Europe, we can either be a country or we can be a European Union. So we will come back to that. That is the topic of debate. But staying with terrible situations in the world, we have Gaza, we have Iran is obviously involved in this as well. I bring up Iran because actually I have a number of Iranian friends here. A couple of them are having babies this year, and my heart goes out to them because they really feel alone here in Luxembourg. Their families are in Iran. We know what it's like to have families not close to us, but not being able to come either way to your family when you're having a baby. That's very hard indeed. And I also had somebody reach out to me and write to me. She was working, an Iranian, in Luxembourg. She went back to Iran, got caught there with the lockdown, and cannot return to Luxembourg. So there's all sorts of complicated...
Because the airspace is shut, or because she can't get an exit document?
It becomes quite complex.
Yeah.
And... But it's just one very personal story of an example of how normal citizens
can be affected.
Are affected. And this is again why politics is so important, and we all should play a role in politics, because it actually affects our lives as normal people not wanting to have a voice in war and all of that going on above our heads. It affects everybody. But anyway, what would you like to... Is there anything you would like to add on the situation that is ongoing and will continue for I don't know how long in other parts of the
Yes,
world.
I mean, with both Gaza and Iran, I think the obviously it's an ongoing story, and we always have these sort of updates with Trump saying there's going to be a ceasefire, it's nearly in the bag, but I think I've said that many times on this particular show. If there is a ceasefire to be agreed on, well, then that would be a wonderful thing, but with all sorts of problems. And yeah, I mean, with Iran as well. I mean, it's an ongoing situation. I think there's not really much to say, apart from the sort of the main sort of headline counts. Really, you see that the Israeli airstrikes continue, and then you see these numbers where you sort of say, well, that's. I mean, we know that 50,000 Palestinians have been killed so far, with over 125,000 people injured in Gaza alone. And like somewhere like Iran, we don't actually have the numbers on the airstrikes. We have the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu today saying he's very positive that he's going to bring back the 58 remaining hostages from Gaza. So when you hear these numbers, you think 58. I mean, I'm very sorry for the hostages, 58 hostages, but compared to the numbers,
that's exactly what I was thinking when I saw those numbers.
Unbelievable, isn't it?
Yeah.
So,
I was wondering, I kind of did the calculation in my head, the value of one life compared to the other.
Yeah, but each life counts.
Of course, that's what I think.
Day, if it's your brother or your
that's
mother
what
or
I
your
believe.
child,
but the question is,
very
what do other
sensitive to
people
each one.
believe?
no, of course, you can't.
So it's even if it's one, if it's 50, if it's 100, I think everybody feels
I didn't mean the
very
comparison
concerned.
like that. I meant the comparison of the number of hostages that are up. I mean, they've been held there for over, a year for sure. 2 years, actually.
Yes, it's every year
2
and a half,
years,
isn't it?
yeah,
So,
yeah.
no, I mean, the numbers game is a horrible one to
Yeah.
play, but, you just, it does still kind of strike you when you see the difference.
There are numbers of zeros in the difference. Anyway, let's bring it.
But I thought as part of the discussion actually in the Luxembourg Parliament about the issue in Gaza and sanctions against Israel, I thought that some of the speeches by parliamentarians was very interesting because, in fact, on this subject, Franz Fayo, do you remember?
Yes.
Well, you do know Franz Fayo. I remember he was here in the studio from the LSAP, and he spoke about this double standard that we have, with Israeli lives compared to Palestinian lives. So, it is quite a pertinent issue here as well.
Yeah, and I'm glad that politicians can speak out because, of course, when they say something, they're scared of jeopardizing their own political futures by saying one versus the other. They want everybody to like them, but that's it's a tricky game, politics. Another political story, we've got union protests going on here in Luxembourg, and the unions are very strong here in Luxembourg.
Well, I think it's the biggest protest I've seen since I've been here. So, that was last Saturday. The estimated was that 15,000 people were protesting in Luxembourg, and it's the unions did a sort of big mobilization of people to protest against social measures that the government is introducing, specifically pension reform. And the other thing that winds people up here no end is Sunday work conditions. So I think oh no, I don't think Clara agrees.
No, I mean it's very close to my heart because you cannot want better conditions without introducing a reform when there is no more money, or that the money is going to be over in a few years. So some reform has to be done, and so you can agree or disagree with their course of action, but also about Sunday, this is also, we as independent workers, I'm an independent worker, and we work all the time when the clients are there.
We're asking for it.
And not having the flexibility of giving, for example, if you have one of your employees working on a Saturday and then you have to give a day off on Monday, but the person wants on Wednesday. And actually you don't have that flexibility given by the current law. So I think it's just not logical not to give that flexibility to employers if the employee wants on a different day, you see. So it's very, it has different layers. So we can say, okay, yeah, we are against that and against the other, but we really have to look at the nuances and...
Well, the new government has put these issues at their heart, that everything does need reforming. And I think the criticism that's being levelled at them is that there is not as much dialogue as was expected in the sort of Luxembourg social model previously, where unions and worker representatives all kind of sat down at these round tables. So I have to say, I don't know if the government's going to back down on any of the reforms, but the Prime Minister Luc Frieden has agreed to sit down with the representatives in July, in a couple of days actually.
Well, I don't know, talking about reforms, if you saw any of the UK news this week. And
yes,
Rachel Reeves...
I know, that was very striking, wasn't
shedding
it?
some tears.
Shedding tears in Prime Minister's questions, yeah. Well, they've been properly defeated, haven't they, on these by rebels in their own party on the reforms for disability benefits.
Yeah, and I was just looking at how tired she looked. My goodness, the poor lady looked so tired. That job is a very, very tough job indeed. Right, let's bring it back to things that I think are very important. So this one I think is extremely important. In France, they have now got a smoking ban in all outdoor places which could be accessed by children.
Amen to that.
Yes, please. My father has a bar. I grew up around smoke every day and being actually bullied for my clothes smelling like smoke. And I can tell you, when my brother visited, for example, Japan, they have cabinets, rooms for people to smoke. And I think we should have those, because then other people will get the smoke in the face or like breathe it in. And I think it's not healthy. Like, why should other lives be damaged too? Like, I respect the choice that other people want to smoke, that it's not on me, that's on them. But at the same time, like, we have to also be mindful about our surroundings. And we can see really when there's like this collective consciousness in other countries, they do it very well. They found solutions. It's not excluding them, but giving them a space, a safe space where they can do it, where not interfering with other people's lives.
Did you tell your father about this?
Oh, yes. He knows about this a lot. Like, my family knew it, but what could you do? It's like there was no regulation at that time. So, and we lived literally in the bar. So like on the second floor. So like every day I came in, I would start getting headaches also because of the smoke, and also because the damage it also causes because you're breathing it in. But at that time, we didn't have money to leave the building to go somewhere else. But thankfully now, I remember when the regulation was passed and then there is no smoking anymore in bars and restaurants. I think I had tears of crying. Actually, I was so happy. Oh. It's actually, people don't see the damage or the negative that comes with it if you don't live it every single day. I think that makes the difference. And
that's
for me,
a really amazing story,
yeah.
Ivan. Thank you.
I actually never shared this story before.
Oh,
It's very
well,
interesting.
thank you
It's
for
the
sharing it
first
live
really
with us.
Well, this
Thank you.
legislation is actually aimed at protecting children. So it's everywhere. They've banned smoking, anywhere where children will access it. So outside of schools, in, beaches, playgrounds. Interestingly, they haven't banned it on cafe terraces. So so I don't know if you would still be affected there. But what I also think's interesting, there was an article today on our website, is should Luxembourg follow this example? Should they also ban smoking in public spaces where children can access it? So it'd be interesting to see if Luxembourg takes...
It also reminds me of a story I read this week in Luxembourg. They caught 3 people coming in from Athens with how many cigarettes was it?
It was
many
unbelievable amounts.
Did you see this story?
Huge, something like 62 cartons. Yeah.
Huge numbers
vast
of
amounts.
Anyway, yeah. So let's leave smoking aside. Now we have the trial in Luxembourg City of a 23-year-old neo-Nazi.
Wow.
Well, this is very interesting because I have to say I have a slightly bigger interest in it because he went to the same school as my children and was in the year above my son. So they all knew him. I mean, didn't know him particularly. I mean, he was a loner, but he was 17 at the time when he was caught building or getting the components together for building a bomb in his parents' house in Strassen. So it was, it was very shocking at the time when he was arrested, and and there was all the information came out, and he's 17, he's only 23 now. He was obviously radicalized online, and it is this, it's radicalized by a neo-Nazi group. He I don't know who he was groomed, but he was particularly interested in sort of racist theory, Nazi ideology. So it's this incel radicalization that is happening. Now people say, oh, he was a loner. He was super bright, really good at chemistry.
The talents were there.
So, ordered all these different components, was kind of collecting urine. So, to make urea, which apparently is part of all these things. He's also some sort of eco-fascist. He was separately tried in Sweden. He's of Swedish origin, for trying to burn down a mink farm. So, it's all these different ideologies mixed in what seems to be a very muddled head. But it's been 5 years because of the trial in Sweden that he's been brought back to Luxembourg and is now standing trial. And when you read the testimony from the police that interviewed him and in the investigators and the psychologists, it's scary stuff. I hope it's not representative. You hope it's just one guy who was radicalized and caught before he did any real harm. But, we've all watched these things.
Well, the
spreading.
problem is it takes just one person to cause an enormous amount of damage.
Yeah.
And the ripple effects of that. I also wonder what it's like for his parents.
Oh, I know. Horrendous. You can't imagine. It must be awful. And but he also seemed to be himself trying to get people involved. He was also looking for people. The psychological assessment found no mental illness or personality disorder. So it's these sort of theories and how they appeal, whether it's Holocaust revisionist beliefs or white supremacist or misogyny. Why is it appealing to young men? And this is a huge question, obviously, that's been put out by that TV show Adolescence.
Yeah.
But it's not one country, but it's also happening in Luxembourg. There's the first incel trial happening in France this week as well. It is. I know it's a bigger conversation, but what is the appeal?
Actually. Because if you look also on the social media and research, looking at social media, when there was a research that looked into the scrolling, what women see, like girls, and what men see. And with men, it's way more violence, way more aggressiveness and war, or like people being slapped, whereas women have more this diverse approach, and that can already have a big impact, because you have to imagine children when they grow up and they experience trauma or see these things, because nowadays they have phones already before 5 years old and they scroll, and if there's no restrictions, they will see those things very easily, and it has an impact on your brain development. At the end of the day, don't quote me on this, but I think my therapist told me once that a brain is fully developed to know what's right and wrong when it's 25 years old, when you're 25 years old. But again, don't quote me on that. But that showed me when he told me that type of stuff, that, wow, so when you're 17 or 10, there must stuff happened to this person for it to go that direction, for this person to feel alone. It doesn't justify the actions, because there has to be accountability for what you do. I believe that. But at the same time, try to look inside of society. What were the enablers for that?
I remember also reading that if you give a blank phone with absolutely no previous history and you put in just a tiny fraction of information, for instance, male, female, and an age, very quickly you'll get a differentiation in the information that's being fed to you. Even if you don't like something or follow something, instantly there will be differentiation from very tiny bits of information.
I just wanted to add here something. I think very often these young people are looking for belongingness. They want to feel part of something, and very often these radical groups, they give this feeling that you are part of something, that we care about you, that you're, you are now in a family.
We understand you.
And I had a personal case in my family, and he told me about it. That he was also very young, between 18 and 25, and he got, attracted into more radical, nationalistic type of movement, which afterwards became a political party and so on. And he told me it's because I was lost. Because we had this a very deep conversation. Why? What made you go into that direction? I was feeling lost.
But who could have helped him? Teachers, family, friends?
Yeah, it's not in the same country. We don't live in the same country.
It doesn't matter. You've got teachers, family, and friends in every country.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm asking though, who could have helped?
Well, who could have helped? It depends whether or not the child, the young person is opening up. Is talking about this with someone. In this case, it's very often people who isolate themselves a little bit and they look for answers on the internet. So they don't necessarily talk to colleagues. Or in that case, you mentioned that he was looking for other people to recruit other people, but it's not always the case. So very often they go through their own searching.
And I think you said something very relevant there, that for many people, the phone becomes the friend and the point of contact. I'm sure, sadly, we are going to have more stories like that in the future. Now, to a fascinating story. Well, there's a few stories left. The Dalai Lama, though, this is an interesting one.
I found it really fascinating. I'm with you. So the Dalai Lama has turned 90, and so there have been not celebrations, but a sort of coming together in this Indian town where he's in exile in Dharamsala, and joint prayers, etc. He has spoken about his reincarnation, and
It's so funny.
I had not realised. I don't know. I just hadn't really taken it on that when he was a young man, he said, "I will talk about this when I'm 90."
Yeah.
And he's 90, and now he's talking about it, and it's not reincarnation generally; it's his. So it's not how the next Dalai Lama will be chosen, which I assumed that there is this. We know enough how they choose the Dalai Lama. They choose a child. But it's the reincarnation of the current Dalai Lama, and therefore that sets him up against the Chinese government completely, who say, no, this is not happening. We get to choose the next Dalai Lama. And he's like, well, but that doesn't work because it's me that's being reincarnated, and it should be the way it's always been.
Yes, fascinating. It's really, really, really fascinating.
This gives some Avatar vibes here.
I know. It's just a brilliant story if you want to kind of live outside yourself, literally. Well, I don't. I need to. Yeah, it's going to send me down the rabbit hole of reincarnation.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, taking on a country like China for your fundamental beliefs, I think that's so cool. But he knew he would live to 90. I'm fascinated by that. I think I'm going to take this on as a mantra. I'll talk about that when I'm 90.
Yes. Don't come with me with that problem until I'm 85. I'll talk to you then. I have time then. I'll pop you in the diary for then. Now, another story that I love is the French astronaut Sophie Adenau and her trip to the International Space Station. And she is going to be fed well.
Well, yes. I mean, I'm, again, food obsessed, but it's super interesting, isn't it? Because you're like, well, what do astronauts eat? So I assumed it was all kind of just dried food that you somehow. But she is going to be fed by someone who's won 10 Michelin stars altogether. And on the menu are things like chocolate.
It still is dried, though.
Yes, exactly. So I mean, it's still questionable whether it's delicious. It's either dried or tinned or in a sort of like a baby, like those pouches. So
I'm speechless.
But it's going to be like chicken with tonka beans and creamy potatoes.
Were you reading the menu? I was reading the menu too. It sounds fabulous.
Shredded braised beef with black garlic, but and lots of chocolate mousse. It sounds delicious. But once it's in a pouch, you do wonder whether it has any taste.
Well, I think what's lovely is, and we must say the French chef is a female called Anne-Sophie Pic, and actually, she has a phenomenal reputation as well. Her whole family, actually, a huge line of brilliant chefs. I think it's the association. If you're up there in space, the International Space Station, which firstly we know it's going to be, we won't have it for too many years longer. So that's already something. And then you're sat there and you know that this lady has thought about you eating this in space. So there's such a connection of the food with the story behind it. Even that in itself makes the food more enjoyable.
I think that's a very good
At
point.
least I'm thinking. You're laughing at me.
Imagine it's all made up, and then she thinks it's actually being prepared by this Michelin, and then actually it is not.
No, but it is. It is.
Okay.
It
It
is.
definitely is. But what I also thought was interesting is that I hadn't realised that in space things taste very bland.
Oh.
So apparently astronauts are always asking for spices because of the way your bodily fluids are affected by the lack of gravity.
I had the hotel school here talking about this because they designed the menu for Luxair flights. Exactly what you're saying. You have to add more salt, more spices. You always have to do this because, for I don't know what the reasons are, but yeah, our senses change up there.
Yeah. So I thought, this lady, presumably she's going to have to up the cook. I mean, she's going to have to up the spices to make it tasty for her astronaut. And it's so very French, isn't it? Yeah. Everybody else can kind of eat whatever. But, French astronaut, female astronaut going into space next year, she's going to have
lobster
top food,
and onion soup. It's fabulous.
Actually, it's a great topic because also food brings people together, and it's easier to approach the topic of politics, for example, when you talk about culture, cultural differences. So it's really easier. I mean, from my personal experience, when you bring food to the table and people around the table, they are more open to discuss also political implications of their actions, political engagement.
Because the focus is bringing it down to the gut rather than the brain. Well, obviously, Ozempic hasn't hit Luxembourg in the same way as it's hit other countries. We still love our food here. Actually, speaking of Ozempic, not entirely related, but we've got to the end without mentioning the wedding.
So the wedding, the wedding of the year, the Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez wedding. And I've been thinking about it a lot, actually, and I was rather surprised why it was taking up so much of my brain space at the weekend. Because
For me, it was climate.
Maybe it was just too hot. But, I first of all, I thought, it's just a nice little thing to look through and sneer at some of the costumes.
Costumes is a good word, actually.
Outfits. And then I think, actually, it's part of a bigger thing, isn't it? Is that we look at it because obviously Jeff Bezos, I know he's not the richest man apparently in the world, but the second richest man in the world. And he has this lavish wedding costing millions in Venice. And I think everyone was actually really horrified by it because we know there were protests in Venice, but it's also this in a city that's actually is sinking, that's the word, not drowning. You're flying in 95 private jets. It just seemed so tone deaf, in a moment where there is so much going on in the war, with wars and poverty in the world. And they were so flash about it, but very without any kind of tact, or it felt so tactless and sort of showing off in a very obvious way that there was absolutely no, kind of trying to scale it back in any way. And I was like, is that why we're kind of like watching it thinking, oh, or is it because we like to dislike those people anyway, the sort of type of celebrities that were there?
I think there's many facets to the story, many, and I think one of them is Mackenzie Scott.
Yes, exactly. So Jeff Bezos' first wife is giving away her fortune, and these guys are just sort of spending it.
And seems to be the absolute opposite of wife number two.
Yes, but we're all fascinated also because none of the Lauren Sanchez and the Kardashians or whatever, they don't look like people that you would ever bump into in the street. So there is also this sort of slight freak show, and you sort of think, how can you wear a diamond ring worth $4 million on one hand and $2.5 million on the other? I mean, it's kind of like, ugh, it's pretty disgusting, isn't it? But, so is it the obvious show of wealth? And then also in a city like Venice, where you think, okay, this always attracted rich people. There were the Clooneys had a wedding where they also wanted to be seen and show the world how famous and rich and all their friends are. And, it was built by what modern day oligarchs would be. But I think the thing about the Bezos wedding is it seemed very empty. These weren't their friends. They're not leaving anything behind apart from some Instagram posts. There's no culture. So, it was quite difficult to watch, but quite obsessive, I found. What about you?
From the youth perspective, like I know that a lot of my friends and activists, because I'm also an activist on the side and I'm also a climate pact ambassador. So for me, was kind of shocking to see how many jets and flights it took, because this is also kind of demotivating if you're from the youth perspective fighting for climate and you're trying to keep this topic relevant with everything that is happening, because of course often when war happens the first thing we ditch is climate because we want to look at the war. But like from a youth perspective and from a citizen's perspective, European citizens perspective, I had some people telling me like, why am I doing so much if they are destroying it like in one flight? Like when we look how much CO2 emissions increase just because of their travels, and we have to consider it's going back and forth. It's not just a one-way thing. They have to go back. That's a lot of pollution that's happening, and that demotivates a lot because they cannot change it so much.
Well, let's hope they're offsetting it in some way.
Yeah, but it is a total disregard for people's feelings or
I would
movements.
Agree.
Yeah.
I would agree, of course. Actually, on the point of Friends, I was listening to a very funny UK podcast with two females. I really love this show. And one of the ladies is saying, yeah, where were the friends like the people you meet on the school run and things like that? Just the usual kind of friends.
Well, my conclusion was that celebrities like that don't have friends. They don't have the old friends.
Or do the school
run. No, they don't do the school run, but they just don't have, you sort of rent a friend really, don't you? I mean, on their foam party on that yacht, I think there were 4 of them. And you think, so this is literally for the photos because you don't have anyone that you actually want to have a laugh with, is it?
I won't know, I guess, in my lifetime. I would never be in that position to need to know. Anyway, let's bring it back to the wonderful guest. Sasha, thank you so much as always. And now we're going to really, it's an extension of what we've been talking about. It's about a citizen and engagement in politics, really, and youth in your case, Ivan, and also just how we can, in your case, Clara, demystify local politics. So just to give an introduction to both of you, Clara, your full name, if I can try and pronounce it, is Daniela Lacramiara.
Perfect.
Oh, Moraru. Moraru. But because your first name is a bit different, we call you Clara. You're a social entrepreneur, an educator and author. You're the CEO of languages.lu. You actually received an extremely prestigious Luxembourg award, the Dix Rodange Lenz Award, for exceptional contribution to promoting the Luxembourgish language. In 2024, you were awarded the European Innovative Teaching Award from the European Commission. You serve as an ambassador for the Erasmus Plus and European Solidarity Corps programmes in Luxembourg. Named Woman Inspiring Europe in 2013 by the European Institute for Gender Equality of the European Commission. You were president of the Romanian Liberal Party in Luxembourg, and you moved into the Christian Social Party here in Luxembourg, Deputy Secretary General there. And you ran for office in Luxembourg City. And this really stands out to me. You're now a PhD candidate at the University of Luxembourg, and the title of your PhD is so deeply specific. I'm just going to read it out. Strategies deployed by women migrant solely on... Let me start again. Take a deep breath. Strategies deployed by women migrant solo entrepreneurs to ensure a sustainable career in Luxembourg. I mean, this is a PhD on you, I think.
Well, it could be.
We'll come back to that. So, Ivan Leal Martins, depending on which language you're speaking. Yeah. You're a European project manager at Wecitizens, which is an NGO based here in Luxembourg, and that promotes civic engagement and the social and solidarity economy. You deeply care about democracy, youth empowerment and EU affairs. You coordinate many educational programs, projects, workshops, events, which always involved citizens, and particularly that the joining up to EU opportunities and the democratic life here. And I mean, I could read off many, many things. I know you help coordinate the Europe Direct Centre in Luxembourgville here, and the European Documentation Centre of Luxembourg, which makes EU information accessible to all. So actually, Ivan, I just want to start with you, because I think here in Luxembourg, as you've pointed out already, it's a small country, and we have many of the European headquarters here in Luxembourg. Why is it so important for us to figure out how we can work and what's on offer to us as citizens from the European Union? Because I think in other countries, it's not made so clearly aware to us what the European Union offers to us as citizens.
I think it's often forgotten what the EU does for all of us, because it becomes such a norm, especially people, youth like me, like they get born into the European Union. So Schengen Agreement established, the Euro established, internal market established. We don't have to think about these things. Whereas like past generations, they learn to process through it. So you guys have probably a different lens than my generation has. I was very lucky to grow in an environment with borders. So Schengen was, for me, at the beginning also super normal. But then through my Erasmus program, through the European Union, I started to discover actually there are so many benefits, and that I took it so much for granted, the European Union. And that is why for me, like, I decided to go actually in this direction and work with we citizens, because I think at the end of the day, it's about citizens' participation and engagement and how to create a safe space to bring them in this area.
What are some of the really key offerings from the European Union?
Okay.
Okay, you've got a lot.
I have even a brochure here with me. This is actually the brochure. I work very closely with the European Commission.
But I wanted to really specific. I know you're definitely youth. I don't know your age, but you're definitely younger than me. But what would be the offerings for? Let's put it into two sections. For young people.
For young people.
Most people would know about the Erasmus program.
Yes, exactly.
That would be a major one. But what other opportunities are available?
So we can actually very simply start with, you have the Erasmus Plus. What a lot of people don't know, Erasmus Plus is not only for studying, it's also for training and going abroad. So you can actually learn. For example, there are a platform called Salto, where they can actually apply to do trainings in other countries where the EU finances everything. We have, like, for example, also the European Solidarity Corps, which I like a lot because people don't know about that one so much, where you do volunteering abroad and you give back to the community, humanitarian aid. That goes till 35 years. So a lot of people don't know. They think after 30, you're out of Erasmus Plus programs, the European Solidarity Corps. No. Certain programs to go actually longer. You have the one thing I wished when I was 18 to know, Discover EU. So it's like a free travel pass in Europe to discover. EU pays everything. Like, that is insane. And you just have to apply, have to explain your motivations. There is that one thing I've learned just actually in our past EU for Your Future event again. The ALMA program, that scheme, it's about aim, learn, master, and achievement. So basically, it's to support disadvantaged people and give them a chance to go abroad. Because often when in your own country you feel lost, you feel like stamped, especially in Luxembourg. We're a very small country, so you feel like everyone knows everyone, kind of, or at least you know someone that knows someone. And then you feel like, I cannot reinvent myself here. And this program actually allows them to go abroad, and then when no one knows them. I don't know if you had that feeling ever. When I did my Interrail 2 months Interrail travel alone, solo traveling, I felt like, oh my God, no one knows me. I can be whoever I want to be, so I can be me. So that is one thing. Then you have also the Creative Europe, which is like for artists, like funds. And I could talk forever about all the projects. That's why I have like this brochure
Are
with me.
all of these for young people?
Yes, all of these.
So what
for
about
young
people older than 35?
Actually, as an Erasmus Plus ambassador, I have to add that there are a lot of programs for institutions as well. So for adult people as well. It's not limited to 35. Yes. You could have mobility of teachers, mobility of administrators, of school, of institutions. So you have a lot of programs, actually, cooperation programs, either small scale cooperation programs, or larger projects involving staff or teaching.
So what
Exactly.
about somebody who's not in an institution? What about us? What about
Yes.
us?
Yes,
Yes.
also so it's not just for non-profit associations. It's also for example, Radio Era. I know they've done some projects like this. So it's an ASBL, but also if you're a company, for example, I have a for-profit company, but okay, we're in education, so it's never really for profit, it's more for impact. However, we are doing a lot of projects, Erasmus Plus projects through my company, so we always have partners abroad. And right now, for example, we are doing a project where we empower a young woman, 20 young women, to learn about entrepreneurship, especially social entrepreneurship, and prepare them for, to be more employable, whether they want to go into corporate world or create their own company or project. So this is very much possible also for you.
I agree. Like that's the same thing. Like we just had yesterday actually a group from NGOs across Europe. They were all above 30, 40 years old. So you can see the Erasmus Plus is not just like for young, but it actually opens up. It creates actually a community. Well, that's the purpose, is to bring people together, get this international experience, and to see more what's out there, like to connect.
You both work in a very socially engaged way through...
Yes.
I mean, it's obviously deeply set inside yourselves, but also in the companies that you founded, and there's been a number of them, and the work that you do as well, Ivan. But how do you engage with people who are not so socially conscious? Clara, I'm looking at you, because I know that you've stood for office here in Luxembourg City. I can think of certain people in Luxembourg who would be driven by capitalism, let's call it.
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, I try to bring together politicians and different communities. And that's not something only related to nationality, to race, but also, for example, coming from the business community. What I've been doing when I was in politics myself, I really tried to build bridges between the political world and the business world, because very often there is a huge gap. And even though business people and the business world, they need politicians to understand their realities in order to pass some laws which are really corresponding to the reality. So I brought together these two worlds, for example, by organizing something that was hugely successful. I've done it since 2017. It's Let's Demystify Politics, which was involving visits of the parliament. Very often I've done it with the now president of the parliament, Claude Wiesler, but also with all the members of the parliament. And I was inviting specific, for example, I've done it for the members of the French Chamber of Commerce or the Irish Chamber of Commerce, just for their members. And they had this direct contact with the president. Now he's president, but at that time he was just president of a political party. And so they had this direct communication, asking questions. And it was a new thing also for the politicians. And he was super, super happy to have this contact, because it's very difficult. Like you say, politicians want to have the contact. Citizens, whatever type of citizen, they want to have the contact, but how do you bring them together?
Yes.
Well, that's a different thing. There's two things there. I meant really, you're very socially conscious, very socially aware. How do you bring in people to think about the social part? But you're talking about something separate, which I want to come to again, which is how do you engage people who are not from Luxembourg to engage in politics? But just coming back, politics has a social bent to it, but of course, it needs taxpayers' money, and that's where people who earn well bring in the money to this country. So how do you get them engaged is the question.
How do you get engaged people? As I said, we are just using different innovating techniques. You organize meetings, but of course, when you bring up the word politics, there are a lot of stereotypes, a lot of myths. Politics is just for Luxembourgers. Let them do it because they've been doing it for so long and they've done it well, so okay, we don't feel concerned.
But this is something that you are really actively trying to change because,
Yes.
you know, as an immigrant, and so much of Luxembourg, I mean, we're all immigrants here in the studio to Luxembourg, and often we cannot vote because we haven't got the citizenship for various reasons, or we've come to the country. And so we don't feel like we have a voice. We know that we can vote in the local elections, but not in the national elections. So that's what you're trying to change as well.
I'm not necessarily looking at the national level. I think we have a lot of work already at the local level because it's less than 20% of foreign residents who are registered to vote in the local elections. So this is the first phase, if you will, of our work is really to raise awareness about the fact that people like yourself, I mean, you're a resident here from a different EU country. Okay, now non-EU, but
No, Ireland is a EU.
yeah, it's Ireland. I thought it's UK. Sorry, so you have the possibility, if you wish, to be a candidate yourself, and of course to vote. And a lot of people, actually, at the European level, more than 60% of people are not aware of this, which is actually part of the European Charter of Fundamental Rights of citizens. So this is something that people should be aware and then decide whether or not they want to engage. But of course, to bring people towards politicians and politicians together with citizens, it's a very complex and complicated thing. So I've tried a lot of different over my 10 years in politics.
It's more than 10 years in politics. So you began at the age of 12 with your first kind of non-profit, you've always been promoting something with the people around you.
Yes, but this is more like I see it as a civil society. So I have a very, very non-typical profile because I have the civil society experience since I was 12, indeed. Then I have the business experience as serial entrepreneur in 3 different countries, and then I enter politics. So it's kind of like very, I bring all this background, and I think this is why it's really important, the work that we are starting now with Politics for All, because without having had this 10 years in politics, for example, I wouldn't have understood how it works. I was, at the highest level of politics in the biggest party of the country. So I understand how they think, and I understand why diversity is important.
And this is something that you very much care about as well.
Yes, because you have only people who are very similar, who are born here, who went to a Luxembourgish school, who speak all the languages of the country, who are competent or less competent. That's not the question. But people who are similar, and they make decisions about 3/4 of the population, which is born abroad. I just went last year, like 2 weeks ago, I think it was. There was a seminar, and I was shocked to see that the number of Luxembourgers with just one citizenship, the Luxembourgish, is 26.6%. And this corresponds to what I was saying for many, many years. I was saying actually 2/3 of the population is born abroad. But no, actually now we see that it's 3/4 of the population which is born abroad, which means a lot of these people are not represented in politics. And when we make decisions, I mean, you could try as a politician to understand where they come from and to, what their needs are. But of course, if you didn't have those experiences, like for example, I was for 1 year, you mentioned one of the, many advantages that Europe brings. For 1 year, I was illegal in Luxembourg in 2006. Because even though I was a business owner, I had to apply for a visa. And actually, the paradox was that I had to write an invitation to myself and have it signed by one of my employees to get a visa. And this is just, it doesn't make sense to me. And how it got solved is because they lost my file in the process in 2006. So I was in 2007, and finally Romania joined the European Union, and then I didn't need a visa anymore. So this was solved. So thank God, because this made my movement and the possibility to work and to live in Luxembourg no longer a problem, which was before 2007. So you see, I'm very thankful to the European Union, because it allowed me to
avoid some paperwork
and also to live and work in any other EU country that I would like to, even in Ireland.
But I think also it's very important to see also that there is also willingness by, like, if we call the people that migrated here, that they want to learn, they want to be implicated. Often they just don't know because they are working and trying to survive, trying to feed the family. That's survival mode. So they don't know, where do I go? Where is a safe space where I can talk, where I can share, where I'm not seen as the dumb one, the one that's asking the stupid questions. And for us, like, I saw that actually when I understood that there is a willingness is when, like, Wecitizens organized what we call this Mixed City Month, because we are located at the GAR. So you can imagine the diversity that is at the GAR, not just the rich, but you also have people that are less fortunate, didn't have so many opportunities. And when we had this event with MEPs, members of the European Parliament, there were people, a diverse group that you never see in other events. Like, I travel a lot to Brussels and go to forums. I'm always shocked when I look around me, I only see white. And then my friends, one of my friends are like, they have also disabilities and different colors. And they told me, Ivan, look when you find, for example, a black person, and it's often the server. Mm-hmm. And I was shocked when we were talking about education and a stakeholder about education, digital education, the future of children. It was just one ethnicity basically talking. And it was, for me, how can we diversify more? How can we bring those people that feel like they matter? Because for me, often, like what I've learned through my friends, that diversity, and it's not just LGBTQ+, it's also
Absolutely,
people with disabilities, visible and not visible disabilities.
Yeah, well, they are, I mean, some of those things that you've mentioned are very clear diversity issues that most people are aware of. But I think in Luxembourg, there are sometimes invisible differentials. But we'll come back to that just after this very, very short break.
The Lisa Burke Show.
And for anybody listening on Today Radio, you can catch the rest of this show on RTL Play, with video, of course, and on Apple and Spotify podcasts. So back to you, Clara, then. You've set up a wonderful collaboration with Wallonia as well. So talk to us about why you've done this. Let's Demystify Politics. It's your project since 2017. It's enabling an awful lot of foreign residents to visit Luxembourg's parliament as well. But it's also in conjunction with our neighbouring area in Belgium, Wallonia.
Yeah, so this is a new project actually, because we will do it in French. Usually, so I've been working a lot with the English-speaking community. That's really I've done my MBA in English. It's kind of like I'm doing all this work because this population, even when I started Languages.lu, it was not really taken into consideration. Everything was in French. And you have all this population which only speaks very often English, so nobody was really serving this community. And I started like this. I realized this population needed a lot of support and somebody to serve them. And so now the project Demystifying Local Politics, which is supported by, co-funded by the European Union through their Great Region program, Interreg Great Region program, is something that requires two partners. So you cannot, it's about fostering a collaboration with the neighbors, in the greater region. So I had to choose one of the regions, and I was looking particularly at Belgium, at Wallonia, because both regions, so Luxembourg and Wallonia, and generally Belgium, they have this mandatory vote for residents, for citizens, which is not mandatory for foreign residents. So we share this element, and I thought it's really interesting to share also experiences and best practices. And they're more French speaking, so we are going to do it for the first time in French, and try to get people who speak, even if they don't speak very well French or English, we can always do a mix. But it's really important to bring people together with politicians on both sides of the borders, because you might know, if we look at the people who work in Luxembourg, 3 out of 4, they are from the cross-border regions. Actually, 2 out of 4. And one is a foreign resident, and one is a Luxembourgish resident. So we have a huge dependency on cross-border transfrontalier workers. which very often they are not taking into consideration. I think because we depend so much on them, I mean, it's 50% of the active workforce of Luxembourg, we need to start paying more attention, because if they decide to to stay in their region, we're really in a big trouble. So that's why we started this project, and also because we realized that in both regions there is a very low implication and political integration of foreign residents. The percentage in Luxembourg is lower than 20%, and it's similar. It's like a 25 in Wallonia. So that's how we started.
You set up a lot of things. I mean, just reading in your background, you set up a federation for women entrepreneurs, Federation 2004, another leadership of Luxembourg women in 2007, Inspiring Women in 2009, and then let's demystify politics. You've got your own businesses, and now you've set up Politics for All. Why do you set up so many different things?
Because there are a lot of communities who have no voice.
But how do you keep running them all?
No, I don't run them all. So, for example, I founded the Federation of Women Entrepreneurs of Luxembourg. I stayed for 3 years. I really set it up. I was in charge of events and PR for the first 3 years. And then you kind of like it leaves by itself. And then you have a board, and the board continues the work. Then you see, okay, but there are not just women entrepreneurs. You have also women in leadership who need a voice, who are not really present. So we started Femme Leader Luxembourg. And then you see, okay, we don't have any funding to kind of promote these people through awards, through books. And then I started Inspiring Women, which was actually a social initiative that I paid entirely with all the profits from languages.lu. A lot of people don't know, because I didn't like to mix the two, but it was financed by my company. So it was a social initiative, and we were giving Inspiring of the Year, Inspiring Woman of the Year, and Inspiring Men of the Year awards, top company for gender equality. So this was a huge topic for me that needed attention, and it's unfortunately still problematic today. If you just look at the women on boards, rejection of the transposition of this European directive into the Luxembourgish law, which is the
30%.
They had, this is the directive that should be transposed. But the Luxembourgish government, so they had a draft law, and it received 2 very formal rejections from the Council of State. Why? Because they don't necessarily, I don't know, do they not want this to happen, that women on board are actually in listed and non-listed companies? Because then the transposition does not correspond to the things that are mandatory in the European directive. And they say, okay, if you don't do it, then you are giving fines to those institutions, and you also go to an annulment of the naming of that person. So that the person who was not respecting, basically, if it's only men, or if it's again a man, and it would have been necessary to have a woman to reach the 35%, then you can annul that decision. But in the Luxembourgish law, in the draft law, they actually added some new things, and actually I wrote them down. It was a warning, a reprimand, and a public statement mentioning the identity of the listed company and nature of the violation, but they omit actually the annulment of the decision, of the nomination decision. You see, so it's kind of like you think, okay, who are these people who make these laws? Do they actually want that to happen?
This is very interesting. This is and this is why we need people who know about the details, the very fine details of lawmaking and how it changes. Let's move to Wecitizens, Ivan. So this is a Luxembourgish NGO, and again, it's about fostering the social economy that you care so much about.
Yes.
So who can join?
Who can join? Everyone can join. So basically, like I said before, we had this Mixed City Month. We have actually now an event that's going to happen on the 14th of July. It's EU Talks and Bites, where it's about the social economy. And it leaded it that way because we actually had like this Erasmus Plus project, Yes 2024, which was about bringing people to the social economy, showing them the benefits. And we had then members of European Parliament simulation game. This is actually in the Europa experience. A lot of people don't know. You can go there not only to have the 360-degree cinema and experience about the EU, but also to play this game MEP for a day, where you put yourself a role of a policy maker and have social topics also. And through that, we created, like, as you can see, the Youth for Your Future event, and also white paper on this area, recommendations from Luxembourgish citizens, youth specifically, and was presented to MEPs, and they could create also boards, and they had workshops there during that day, and really interact with them. And throughout that, now we are trying to go to Bordeaux, because it's going to be like an event also about the social economy, where we're trying to do a delegation. So
it's a lovely place to go.
Yes, I think so. It's nice.
I wanted to know, again, just bringing back to youth,
yes.
Which I can't travel back to myself, but vicariously. For young people here in Luxembourg, what does Luxembourg offer as opposed to the EU? Because you keep bringing it back to EU initiatives, but what does Luxembourg offer?
That is such a good question. I'll have to think about it, because my expertise is in EU topics. So when I think about Luxembourg, I know from my friends that they participate a lot in. It's when I think about what the Luxembourg offers, then I think about the political groups. Then probably parties, when they do like host events and also like panel discussions. But when does Luxembourg offer for social?
I'll let you just sit.
Yeah, let me think about that. That's a really good question.
Sit with you. But okay, coming back to you, Clara. You have done so much for Luxembourg. What brought you here in the first place?
Oh, that's a very interesting question. I started actually to work on a project which is called House of Luxembourg in my city in Sibiu, Romania, because in the 12th century, people from this region, for about 30 villages, which were destroyed in the year 1143, to be very exact, and they immigrated in my region around the city of Sibiu, because at that time, these regions, they were both part of the Austro-Hungarian Imperium. So it was not Luxembourg and it was not Romania. And so because of this historical and cultural links.
But in 1143, how long would it have taken to get from here to there?
I have no idea, but they somehow got there. They received from the representative of the king, Geisha II, which was at that time a Hungarian king of the Imperium, and they received houses, they received land, and they were working for the...
So it was the opposite. The what is
went,
now Luxembourgish people were the immigrants to your area.
Exactly. So they went there, and what's interesting is that after so many years, actually there are still some people speaking something very similar to Luxembourgish, and this was also one of my projects where I tried to identify, I did identify people who are indeed older, but who spoke something very similar to Luxembourgish. And if you go to Centre de Littérature in Mersch, you can listen to this recordings, and actually the same recordings were done also in other regions for example, in the area of Wisconsin in the US, or in other parts of the world where Luxembourgish immigrated in the 12th or the 18th century, or throughout the history. And
well, Jeff Thompson was on the show just a couple of weeks ago talking about just this, in fact, and I've actually been contacted by an American who's bringing over American people from this area to meet with their families here in Luxembourg. So they'll come to this show. So any Romanian families are also very, very welcome again to this region. When it comes to languages, you care deeply about this. It's been your business for so many years. If somebody comes to Luxembourg, what language do you think is the most important to learn?
Well, if it's for work integration, my answer is French. There is no doubt. Now, if it's somebody coming from a francophone country, then of course it would be first English. Then I would recommend Luxembourgish. Luxembourgish is something that you learn because you want to, because it's I think it's non-essential, but it's fantastic to have it. It gives you the feeling of being part of a very elitist family. For example, when we are traveling with Luxembourg and we go somewhere and we hear, Luxembourgish, and I understand. Actually, I start to talk to people. It's like you get this feeling, wow, I'm special. I'm among the few ones. It's really right. I don't know. I feel like that because I was not born and raised in Luxembourg, so it kind of like feels something really special to me. And it was the same also with politics. When I entered politics, I was surrounded only by Luxembourgers, very few non-Luxembourgers. And it also gave me this feeling like you are special, it's like you are now part of this community. You are truly part of this community.
So you're clearly exceptionally good at languages. In your experience of a normal person who's never learned a language before, how long does it take for an adult who comes to this country to learn a language?
It really depends on
I know it depends on many things, but what would be your advice to somebody who's never tried before to learn a language, an adult learner? How much time should they dedicate, and what is the quickest way for them to learn? I think they would really like to know this.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, it depends whether or not you put in the effort of listening to the radio in Luxembourgish, of going to events and being surrounded by some Luxembourgish who are born and raised here.
It doesn't need to be Luxembourgish. I mean any language.
Any language. Oh, well. Well, it really depends. I mean, if you want to get to cover the first level, then again, it's like, what level would you like to get to in order to come here to have a
the basic question is how quickly does it take? What is the practice that needs to be put in?
Normally, it's between 6 and 9 months to cover the first level of any language. I mean, some languages, if they are linked to your mother tongue, then it will go so much quicker. For example, if you speak German and you start learning Luxembourgish, in 30 hours, I had the situation of somebody who in 30 hours he was good in Luxembourgish, but because he was very, very good in German already, so he had all these basics and grammar rules. Otherwise, so you have to count between 6 and 9 months, depending on the effort. So the more effort you put in, it could be 6, but less than 6 months for a level, I wouldn't think it's possible.
And then broadening it out to your business acumen and the fact that you have a very clear eye on what's missing when you come to a country, let's call it Luxembourg in this instance. What's missing in Luxembourg today?
What's missing, it's what was missing also a lot of years ago when I first came, and I was very surprised when I found out that this language actually exists, because there is no
I get told it's a dialect from Germany.
It was considered a dialect in the past until it was recognized as an official language. So, but if you come as a tourist, obviously you can't figure out that this language actually exists, because there are no signs in the city which could help you understand that this is a language. And I think this is missing. So you cannot have the wish that people learn this language, and, all the foreign residents, which are 3/4 of the population, unless they see some utility, because time is so scarce when you come here. You come with a family, with children. You have to integrate into a new community, into a new work. It's like so much to learn about this. You are not coming here just to learn a language. So I think this is missing, and it was missing for 20 years or more. They didn't do anything to promote this language and to give some visibility. Visibility is like if you go to Israel. Yeah, Israel, I mean, it's Hebrew, it's a very complicated language to learn, but you see it everywhere, always with translation. And so it helps people. And I was so surprised that people in maybe 6 months, I met in the bus some people, for example, and from Philippines. And in 6 to 9 months, they were actually speaking. And I sent also my nephew to a camp. And in 1 month, he was writing to me in Hebrew. And it's so amazing because you hear it everywhere, so they can switch to English to help you, but you see that it's really useful if you spoke that language. So if we had that in Luxembourg already 25 years ago, I think the situation would be so different. And I had a lot of discussions with politicians, which are very unhappy that we from the international community don't put enough effort into learning the languages of the country. And it's just that I'm saying, it's like, okay, since I'm no longer in politics, I have no practice. I met yesterday one very good friend who used to have also a language school. And he told me, you're losing because we don't see each other so often. And it's true. I think I have 2 or 3 people I speak in Luxembourgish with, and the rest is always English, French, Spanish, Romanian, all the languages. But
all the other languages that you
All
speak.
the other
How
languages.
nice.
Yes.
So, Ivan, if there's anything that you could change that would help, from a political point of view, that would need steering legal change, what should change in Luxembourg to make it better for young people?
For younger people, starting at from school age, I think I would have wished to learn all about these opportunities in a younger age, and actually implement them, not just learn them, but actually allow the students to go abroad. I think in my high schools, I never heard about Erasmus Plus ever until I got to university. And even when we talk about the EU, it's very fast forward and it's not shown. Unless you live in Schengen, then you get probably bombarded with Schengen and agreement. But I think it is missing in a very young age. It's the same thing with the language. I agree 100% with you. Growing up in Luxembourg, learning the language. I taught myself through television when I was 3 years old, French and German. And I saw that the priority setting was never, for example, on EU opportunities, what young people can do already, or for example, of the language. I think if we integrate that in a younger age and give them the chance, not only to learn about it, but implement it. But for me, it's all about implementation. If you don't implement things that you learn, gone, like you said.
Sasha, have you anything you'd like to add?
Well, I agree that I think Luxembourg has this unique opportunity here about using lots of languages, but you don't actually need to use Luxembourgish very often. So I'm also someone who learned Luxembourgish, and I've forgotten most of it because I never speak it. Because when you go into a shop in town, I mean, if you spoke Luxembourgish, whoever's working there wouldn't be able to answer you. So I think, unlike any other country I've ever lived, where you are really forced to learn the language because otherwise you look an idiot, here you get away with it. So I think I can imagine if you could make the country, everybody speak one language in a way, that would be better. That was the way to get by. But you don't need to.
But it was a political mistake not to invest. I mean, everything I've done for the Luxembourgish language, and I'm the only non-native which received this amazing award for my work. I've done it with my own money from my company. I never had any funding for those for the first online courses. I was thinking, how is it possible that you don't have such a thing in 2004? The first online Luxembourgish courses, or later on.
Well, I mean, they didn't have that much online when I arrived in 2015.
Yes, actually.
That was mostly done by word of mouth when I arrived.
It was about
very
13 years later that the city of Luxembourg started something like Quatropole.
The only thing that flipped things to going online since my living here was COVID. That's when things started going really online.
I think we were really a pioneer at that time. It was probably a little bit too early even, because it was 2004 and we had some clients, but not enough to justify such an investment to keep it going. So we stopped after a few years, and it came indeed more with COVID.
And very finally, before I have to leave the studio, I need to ask you, well, I mean, I don't know how you find the time to do everything you do, but now your PhD, which is Strategies Deployed by Women, Migrant, Solo Entrepreneurs to Ensure a Sustainable Career in Luxembourg. So, what are the strategies deployed by women, migrant, solo entrepreneurs to ensure a stable?
I didn't finish my studies, so but what sustainable career is a new. A bit fancy concept, which actually can be resumed, because I like to simplify, complex concepts, and it actually means: are you happy, healthy, and wealthy in your job?
So this healthy, is wealthy.
Yes, this means that it's sustainable. This means that you are going to do it also tomorrow and after tomorrow and the future, and you are happy, you are wealthy, both your body and in your spirit, and you have enough money. I mean, now, of course, that's a concept, philosophical concept, how much is enough, but you have enough to be happy and to continue. So I'm in my 5th year, and because I'm doing it part-time, obviously, and I have no funding.
given everything else.
And I
When
have
do
no
you sleep?
funding.
That's the question here.
Yeah,
Why is no one asking that question? When does she sleep?
We were messaging quite late last night. She doesn't sleep.
No, I need my 9 hours of sleep. I have to say.
That's not
It
true
is.
because you were
It is.
messaging me around midnight.
Yeah,
so.
but to function well, I need my 9 hours. So yeah, I'm actually interviewing a lot of people, only women, obviously, who managed to survive and to be having a sustainable career for more than 5 years. Who have a background, a migrant background, and I'm interviewing a lot of people, and then see what those strategies are. How did they make it? Of course, I could interview myself as well, but I cannot interview myself. So that's why I'm looking at different communities, and I hope that next year I will finish it, and then I can come to present.
And you can tell me all of the results. Yeah, but we just need a teaser. We need a little teaser as to what are some of the strategies that are employed.
Well, for example, investing in your network, in your social capital. That's one of the strategies that so far I noticed that it's coming to a lot of people, because your clients are your your friends. Sometimes they don't become your clients, but your network could be giving you the first referrals. I mean, it was my case, for example, and this is how you get your first clients. This is how you're sustainable in time. So you have clients who come back, clients who recommend you. So investing early on, even before you start your independent activity, is extremely important, because if you just start and you say, okay, no, I have some people who say, I'm not joining the Independent Workers Union. I will wait until a little bit later and then I will join, or another entrepreneurs association. I say, no, that's not a good approach. On the contrary, you should join now, because it will help you develop quicker. It will help you benefit of the experiences of all the others who will be in the same community as you. You will advance so much quicker when you have the feedback of other people.
I don't know how you find the time to do all of this. I mean, thinking and just reading about what you do, it makes me feel exhausted.
I think at the end of the day, it's about setting priorities. I think that is probably how you manage, because I'm coming from a hard-working family. I see that my parents do a lot of priority setting. That's how they manage, and less sleep, of course.
Yeah, no, actually I need my sleep, but I have my brain works in a bullet point. Even though I studied philology and journalism, actually my brain is really with bullet points. So I like to simplify. Yes. So kind of like, okay, what is okay? How can I bring this super complicated thing to something, just a few words, just 3 bullet points? And of course,
I actually also work in bullet points.
yes, and it helps you so much, because instead of doing, your entire speech, you write you just have some bullet points. Okay, I want to achieve this and I want to achieve that. And actually I do it because I see there is an impact. That's what motivates me. And that's why I enter politics as well. I was really hoping to have this impact from inside a political party.
I'm sorry, I have one very final question, and then this is it, because I know the next person needs to come into the studio, which is, in politics, we sometimes have people who come into politics for very good reasons. They want to create impact. We also have some personalities in politics today, which is about the ego. So how does one separate the ego in politics, please vote for me, look at me, this is what I do, I'm great, from the impact they want, or hopefully want, to provide to the citizens?
For some years in politics, I can tell you, being a politician is not easy. It requires a lot of time, and you have to give your time, your energy. I sacrificed a lot by being involved, and just for the record, I was never paid. A lot of people think that I was paid because I was doing so much. I was present. I was mobilizing people, and they thought, well, for sure, this is her job. And so you have to be passionate. And sometimes the only satisfaction that you get is, for example, when people are complimenting you. So I can understand that for some people, their ego grows a little bit because they can only feed themselves with compliments from people, from voters. But on the other hand, you also have a lot of pressure on you from people you barely know or never met, who ask you all sorts of things. And I was not even elected in office, and I had so many people contacting me to introduce them to Luc Frieden, to introduce them to. So it's a lot of. It's not an easy answer because it really depends on each person, but it takes a big personality to enter politics. You have to develop your skin, a thick skin. And that's why actually I left, because you really have to be very patient and resilient. And I think I would be better in my position now in Politics for All and educating and accompanying younger people, because I think the younger you are when you get in, the more chances you have to actually make a career. And I was hoping that I would make a career, that I would be the first MP from the international community who's not born and raised here. But I didn't. Okay, it's not a failure.
Not yet.
No.
We don't know, Clara, your future, whatever it's mapped out in the constellation of bullet points that you have in your brain. I'm quite sure it will be fabulous.
I'm just now trying to
finish a PhD, create another social entrepreneurship
No,
business.
right now I have enough on my plate.
I think so.
But I want to share what I've learned, for so many years. I've learned so many different things, and I want to share it with the future political leaders.
And you certainly do that. Clara, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so
Ivan,
much
thank
as
you
well.
so
Thank
much.
you.
And Sasha, thank you as always.
Thank you.
And let's hope for a slightly cooler weekend where we can enjoy. And good luck to everybody in the world who gets their IP results this weekend. Including my daughter.
The Lisa Burke Show.